Our intentions at the Montreal team is always to add more gameplay to the universe. We wanted to do something that was a little bit different than the Reclaimer crash site. So when the players start up 318, the Daymar crash site is going to have 2 crash chips so that the player can explore. The endeavor that we embarked ourselves when we were working on the Reclaimer was huge because of the size of the ship and how big it is. The team was looking to work on something that was a little bit smaller, easier to break up, and that we could do multiple crash sites with the size of team that we have.
So we wanted to have two crash sites. First one was with the 600i, the second one was the MSR.
After a couple of discussions, we thought that having 2 ships crashed at the same locations would allow us to have a bigger crash site, so there's more places to explore for the player.
So when we bring this idea to merge the both of them, we would just decide to do that on Daymar because it was a sand planet and we wanted to create this location in a different biome than what we did on the Reclaimer.
The player will discover the 600i totally wrecked into a cave.
When you get into that cave and you see how the 600i cockpit is hanging with a bunch of wires, it reminds me of a lot of the scene from Jurassic Park when the bus is broken up and it's hanging down the cliff.
600i, we want the player to feel how hard was the crash, how the spaceship was impact.
What I like about the MSR is that it's actually a little further away from the rest of the outpost.
The ship crashed a little bit more like the Reclaimer. We're going to see the trail and the ship just kind of in the sand.
So the player needs to go in and explore. The whole feeling of the MSR and the whole outpost is that it's been lived in, it's being used, it's been repurposed.
Some people are there to salvage the ship, to take what parts are still good, to be able to resell it or reuse them. And we create this kind of shooting range just to add some more gameplay opportunity for the player to just fool around and just having fun. Now we have created a piece for the 600i and the MSR. And we have a lot of settlement assets, so now we'll be able to create a lot of different kind of crash sites on other planets, other biomes.
It was a good exercise to use the new Houdini tech we have. We'll be able in the future to do more content like that, easier and quicker for the player.
For the next Derelicts crash, we're not sure yet which ship we're going to use. Maybe when you're going to see the Daymar crash site, maybe in the comment you can help us to find which kind of ship we'd like to see for the next Derelicts crash.
Derelicts show us another side of our spacecraft we generally spend our entire time trying to avoid. They tell a story of Star Citizen's in-fiction past, while providing tantalizing clues about the future of salvage, player homesteading, and more. And the first of these 600i and MSR Derelicts will be found in the upcoming Alpha 318, alongside Sand Caves, Derelict Outpost, additional rivers, the PTV race, revitalized Korea, prison editions, the arrival of persistent entity streaming, and more stuff that we'll be talking about real soon. But as we approach news of this year's CitizenCon 2952, check out the robertspaceindustries.com website for details in the coming days, and that's why I got a haircut. We thought we'd take this week and turn a quick sprint report on its side with a look back at some of the stuff we saw in last year's show and how it's been coming along in the time since. Now, one of last year's big showcases were the colonialism outposts, and in the time since then, they've grown and expanded several times in scope. And while we're not gonna spoil all of that here just yet, what we can show you is what we call overlay work. Overlays are essentially a collection of props and dressings that can be added to an object container of an existing location. In this case, several of the colonialism homestead modules, to give them a look and feel of something very different than their original intention. With overlays, this facility that clearly started life as a domicile for the traditional homesteader has now demonstrably been overtaken by a rather messy outlaw element. Which isn't to say that all outlaws are messy. We already had that debate last year. But you can see here the power of proper dressing in action all the same, and its ability to transform a location from cozy homestead to outlaw ruggedness. And you can see here a recent in-game test of the new outlaw overlay in action on a potential homestead for perennial testbed, Daymar. Now, tests like this are done to accomplish a few things. First and foremost, to validate what works and what still needs adjusting when these modular overlays are assembled in the variety of ways that will ultimately make up dozens and dozens of different layouts throughout the verse. It can also serve as identification of feature and UI needs for Rastar, the internal tool that designers are using to populate the entire Pyro system ahead of Alpha 4.0, that the new overlay hasn't broken any of the existing quest work in place, that AI doesn't get stuck on a random box that wasn't there in the base module, and much, much more. And as work progresses, the Outlaw overlay will continue to be developed into smaller subsets, some generalized for use anywhere in the verse, and others specifically tailored to some of the many gangs found throughout the Pyro system. And before we wrap up, let's skip ahead and show you a few more areas without spoiling some of the quest context here. I'll just say, some of this stuff is dark. And just so you don't think they've only been working on the same stuff from last year, here's a sneak peek at early white box of a repair and service station you may encounter on your travels in Stanton, Pyro, and beyond. Work is also underway creating various refineries and other producers that will make use of the upcoming resource management system to provide new opportunities for players to build their credit empire, or should they choose, hinder the advancement of someone else's. And finally, a quick look at progress of the massive outlaw space stations that you'll be seeing more about later this year as our journey to 4.0 continues. I'm just not sure how much we can get away with showing ahead of CitizenCon, so if there's just a picture of me here, imagine me putting on clown makeup right now, because it got saved for the big show. So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that the team at Turbulent continues to crank out some of the best-looking, worst-looking spacecraft in the persistent universe. That as the Derelict library continues to expand, the opportunities for environmental storytelling increase, and for players to maybe write their own stories of Star Citizen's in-fiction past. And that we're just a few short weeks away from this year's CitizenCon event, where there'll be some stuff you're expecting, some stuff that maybe you're not, and that if I'm the host, some stuff you're not that you really probably should be. I'll let Spectrum figure out what that means. Now keep an eye out on the RSI website for details when those drop. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you all here next week.